Welcome back. You're still with Berita 1 English, and we're still discussing US-Indonesia Investment Summit. Let's say you have the ear of the government. What would be the top priority that the government has to address in trying to draw foreign investment in Indonesia? Is it regulation? Is it manpower, like I said? Is it what? Give me one, if you're given one choice, for example.
Well, if you talk about infrastructure, you need capital to build. You need time, right? You need to secure land.
Exactly.
If you talk about human capital, then it takes 5-6 years to educate a PhD, right? So I think the regulatory answer is the one I think the government have to look at.
And that's the easiest to address.
And it's the cheapest, right?
Right.
It's just one paper and sign. I think that's the most challenge for the next government.
Right. You think
I would
that
agree.
too?
The ease of doing business, that's the immediate, what we'd call the low-hanging fruit that the companies are most interested in today. Make it easier to bring the money in here to invest in Indonesia. Right. Yeah.
And you're talking at every level, of course, not just central government, because like we talked before, the regions have also a large say in what investment comes and what investment stops in their regions. Yeah. How would you deal with that? I mean, talking with the central government, you are having the ears of the central government, but what about the regions? How would you go about it?
Yeah, I think one of the objectives of the summit is also listening from the regional government.
So you have regional representatives as well. Oh, that's
so I think it is one of the most important factors because the investment will be in the region.
Yeah, in the region. That's why.
So that is why. I mean,
you may be talking like really good
the manufacturer is there, so you have to talk with the regional government.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because it's from what I've heard so far is a lot of the problems are mostly, well, not mostly, but a lot of them are in the regions as well.
Yes. I think in the region, if you talk about the budget of the government, 30% goes to the region. So I think now the government have to, as you mentioned before, to coordinate not only between ministers but also with the regional government. And because some permit or license is issued by the local government, so they have to make sure. For example, like the mining permit, you have to have the same map, right?
All right.
To issue based on that. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. We have the same map to, data is one of the big problems.
Right.
Land acquisition is another challenge.
Well, I think we're addressing that land acquisition. It's moving towards that. Maybe talk about the summit itself, what you're going to. So basically, the summit will come up with a recommendation. Would come up with suggestion with what is it?
Right.
In what form is that?
I mean, the summit is a dialogue.
Right.
And so it's a full day with an evening, and it's a little bit different than some. There's no presentations. It will be the ministers coming up and giving their views, and the companies engaging to talk about that. So, it's really, again, a process that day, and what makes it different is we haven't front-loaded what we want to achieve out of it, because it'd be easy for us to write, if it's successful, it'd be this. More challenging is to say, let's see where this takes us. Right. Let's listen as much as we talk as U.S. investors, and then that allows us to make the decisions in terms of where we go from there. So it really is listening as much as talking. We didn't write what we consider to be, if it's successful, we'll have achieved this. Right. Our investors are here really to listen as much.
So basically you're putting everything on the table and
it's a dialogue.
It's a dialogue, exactly.
To get through it.
Yes, yes.
And what's the next step after this?
I would think that next year, the next step is when we come from this, from an individual company view, they'll be able to make certain decisions about investment. But beyond that, working very closely with Paramedina, we want to drill down even further.
Who's monitoring that?
Well, BKPM has been a very useful ally in this process, and we've worked very closely, as has Codden and Apindo. So they have a roadmap. Ours is in many ways very similar and reinforcing. So working with our partners, Paramedina, BKPM, Codden, and Apindo, bring together the resources and say, okay, what does this mean? How can we continue the dialogue? Beyond just the ministers, but the second, third level down, and the regions as well.
And who's providing the feedback for all of this?
The feedback loop,
right.
well, it'll be the companies themselves that tell us whether they think it's valuable. It will be, I'm sure, Paramedina who's monitoring this process and will tell us.
So it is Paramedina.
Oh yeah, they're there.
I think yes, as the title of the report is promoting investment and nurturing prosperity. So I think the objective of this report and also the summit is have the sense of ownership.
Right.
So investment is not only about the companies, about the government, but also people. I mean, the benefit is going to the people. So in general. So I think the ownership of this issue have to be to the society. Yes.
In terms of what?
I mean, because of
it's easy to say it should benefit the society, but it's a long process. You don't.
It is.
It does tend to trickle down rather than like pour into the society.
Yeah. I think, of course, if the companies would like to invest, they require the rate of return, right? So it's normal for if a business is invest and then they need to require rate of return. But I think the government have to regulate things that there is a value added for the economy, not only for the companies but also for the society. And I think that is why the dialogue is important for the not only to listen from the investment but also to hear from the government side.
All right.
And let me give an example. Let's take the IT sector. One of the issues there's a couple issues inhibiting investment today. A negative investment list was issued last year, which prohibits foreign capital investment in e-commerce.
All right.
So that is to the detriment of Indonesia. Many great Indonesians are now going to Silicon Valley. So maybe one outcome of this would be to take another look at something as specific as that. If we look at, for instance, in IT as well, there's a new law that's being drafted that requires every company that's involved in public service to have a data center and a recovery center. Huge, tremendous costs. But it's unclear what's public service. Is Pt.5 a public service because you talk to the public, or is it government? So getting some clarity on some very specific issues would be the next step to continue forward. And to the extent that that's successful, the summit and the report and this dialogue will have been successful.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing with us today.
Pleasure.
It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
And that sums up our program today. I'm Bhimanto Suwastoyo. We were talking with Andrew White, Managing Director of AmCham Indonesia, and Pa Bima Priyo Santosa. He actually shares the same name, I forget. See you then, and stay with us with other programs of Pt.5 English. Bye-bye.